Like that's what we
Mm.
want. The technology and the environment can allow us to do. Is you can be in a place that's just stunning and that feels amazing, where you're healthier just through breathing and for having been there, and psychologically and spiritually and whatnot, but also where the place is actively trying to cater to you and think and proactively think, how can I make this human's experience better for what they want?
Welcome to Behind the Stays, a podcast that shares the stories behind your favorite boutique hotels, short-term rentals, and hospitality brands, and the hosts, operators, and entrepreneurs who've brought them to life. Every Tuesday and Friday, you'll meet the military veterans, the retired flight attendants, the tech entrepreneurs, the school teachers, the single moms, the hoteliers, and real estate investors, who are all, in their own unique ways, shaping the future of travel and hospitality. Discover how these visionaries from all over the world have built stunning landscape hotels in the mountains, designed bohemian bungalows on the beach, erected eclectic, off-grid, nature-immersed escapes, and so much more. Behind the Stays is brought to you by Journey, a first-of-its-kind loyalty program that brings together an alliance of the world's top independently owned and operated stays and allows travelers to earn points and perks on boutique hotels, vacation rentals, tree houses, ski chalets, glamping experiences, and so much more. And I'm your host, Zach Boozy-Cruz, head of the Journey Alliance. All right, friends, without further ado, enjoy the show. In just a moment, you meet Ari Smith, co-founder of Balance Farm, a visionary micro-resort in Vermont that blends sustainable luxury with the power of AI. Ari's journey began in tech entrepreneurship, where he founded and sold a company to Microsoft, during which time he learned a lot of hard lessons about innovation, scale, and adaptability, especially as a first-time founder. But it was actually meeting his wife, Hillary, who is the co-founder of Folly Collection and a previous Behind the Stays guest, that inspired him to fuse his tech-savvy background with hospitality. Today, on 540 acres of pristine land in Vermont, Ari and Hillary are reimagining what it means to offer a truly bespoke travel experience. From personalized amenities crafted through intelligent data to off-the-grid energy solutions, Balance Farm is more than a boutique stay. It's a living lab pushing the boundaries of comfort, connectivity, and creativity. In this conversation, Ari and I explore his early tech ventures and what selling to Microsoft taught him about growth, the role of AI in delivering hyper-personalized guest experiences, why blending nature, design, and cutting-edge innovation is key to future-focused hospitality, how hands-on experimentation from hydroponics to hidden IoT sensors shapes their vision, and what happens when entrepreneurial grit meets the timeless desire for meaningful escapes. All right, friends, without further ado, get ready to meet Ari. All right, folks, we are live. Ari, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm doing great, Zach. How are you?
I'm doing great now that I'm talking to you. You are just more interesting by the minute. We just talked for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes
Thanks.
before we hit record here. And you brought the energy, you brought the ideas. We started talking about whether or not our kids will ever drive. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I
just had a
brought the
fantastic
terror. I
conversation.
brought the
You brought the
terror.
terror. Yes. Oh gosh. Well, I've got so many questions for you, and I'm really excited to just kind of hear your story and understand what you think about the future of hospitality. You're building some just remarkable product and new companies in the space, and I want to dive into all of that in a second.
Mhm.
But I actually want to start by hearing a story about how you sold. I don't know if it was your first company, but at least a company to Microsoft. It's not every day that I'm talking to somebody that sold a company to Microsoft, so I have to
Yeah.
take the opportunity as an entrepreneur to ask you, what was the story behind that venture?
Yeah, it was actually a subsidiary of Microsoft, for whatever that distinction matters. But I will tell you, it was honestly chaotic. It's probably all the things that you would stereotypically imagine. It was me and my co-founder, sitting in Kendall Square, just coding 24 hours a day, slamming back, Coca-Cola, just to stay awake and just working, and then stress and, hopefulness and highs and lows. But I could tell you probably the most relevant aspect was what it taught me. We started a
Hmm.
mobile tech software company, and this is back in the day when you didn't have iPhone wasn't even there. It's like early 2000s, and it was it was something to really come to understand the importance of really like selecting the right type of investors and having the right type of structure. Like we didn't know anything about like power dynamics or board of directors or like levels of
Yeah.
control. I can tell you that the sale of our company was more of a forced decision. Like we didn't actually have control of our company at that point. So it was a really difficult lesson, but it definitely taught me a lot about like governance and
Mm.
ownership and like how to protect the vision of what you're building. So while that wasn't necessarily a wonderful experience, what it did is it ensured that I basically haven't been employed in 20 something years. Like after that, I did my time at Microsoft where, you have to work for a certain amount of time. I was their solutions architect, managing the Verizon and Verizon Wireless accounts, which at the time were their largest accounts globally. And so I had to learn a lot about business. And that was actually a really good learning experience. I'm still working with one of the guys that I met back there at the time. But yeah, after
Wow.
that, I knew like I just do not have the personality or temperament to work for anybody unless they're interested in the same exact things that I am. So I've been
Yeah.
unemployed since that point.
Wow, wow. I mean that's amazing. Talk about sort of like a lot of lessons learned too at a young
Hmm.
age too about sort of the unsexy aspects of entrepreneurship, right? Where
Yeah.
we're just sort of like inundated with all the sexy aspects, right,
Hmm.
of it, and things like governance and figuring. Like I was thinking the other day about the fact that I've had a couple of very very small relative to I'm sure your exits, but small exits with companies I've built, and what's so funny about like that process as an entrepreneur when you're first getting started, you're just so eager to get any sort of traction, and there's
Hmm.
just so much trust, right, with everybody that
Yeah.
like wants to buy into your vision. And my wife's an attorney, so she always gets on me for this, but it's like I just always assume the best, right? Like that is
Yes.
such a dangerous thing to
An
do as you
absolutely
grow.
idiotic mistake that I keep making. Like and the funny thing is that it's situational because
Mm,
when with my investors were great initially, and then 9/11
yeah.
happens. We were based out of Manhattan. 9/11 happens,
Okay.
and it was pandemonium. Deals fell apart because people who passed were in that building who were like it was like
Wow.
an inflection point for our business. But then everything changed. The investor perspective changed so dramatically. It was like, we have to take action. The world is chaos. We don't know what's going to happen. And so then rash decisions get made. And that's when you find out, oh, how the way they said we'd all be collaborating, they actually made sure they had power and that we were just like crossing our fingers, but we were too naive to realize that. So it did take that event to really open our eyes to the situation we were actually in. So that's probably maybe
Jeez.
the other
Yeah.
learning lesson is like you got to think about what happens in the worst case. I mean, the
Yeah.
truly worst case versus how things can seem on the surface, because you always want to believe the best of your partners, your co-founders, your clients. Like that, if you don't do that, you're living a miserable life. But if you do
Yeah.
do that without like blinders on, well, then you end up in situations like what I just described.
Yeah, geez. And I should have asked this a moment ago, Ari, but what was the core product? What were you
Uh,
guys offering?
it was called AlertWire. What it would do is we built these agents that would sit on people's desktops and allow you to access like information from behind firewalls. Again, it seems really trivial now, but we would translate all the content into a format that was compatible with even like WAP phones. So phones that didn't even have like nice visual screens that can use, just like we would take Google, or sorry, like Google, Word docs or Excel spreadsheets or text documents or emails. We would take all that information and convert it to a format so you could get all that on your phone, even if you were at home, just
Wow.
through a very, very simple interface. It was, there was another company at the time, I can't remember what they were called, Pointcast, I think, that sort of did something sort of like this where they get you news and stuff like that through corporate firewalls. But that was like the focal point, was basically ensuring that you could seamlessly get all of your corporate information regardless of where you were on any mobile compatible, on any device, actually, mobile or desktop.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And like it's like super like novel at the time,
At
I'm
the
sure.
time, yeah, most people didn't
Yeah.
understand how to set up like VPNs, and even if they did, you'd have to get your business to approve it. And this was just a way of sort of doing it a little and run around. Although we learned that businesses didn't like when you do that, so we sort of refactored it to be something more enterprise centric.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that's amazing. Wow. I mean, congrats. That's huge.
It
And
was
I
a
mean,
lot of
talk about
work.
a lot of lessons learned early on. And I always think it's cool too when you hear stories of folks who, they founded a company and then they ended up selling to one of the big companies, one of the big technology companies, and like they have to stay on in some sort of like senior management role or whatever it is, like for a set period of time. It's I mean, I'm sure I've heard from some buddies and stuff that it's like the worst and they hate it. But then from other folks, it's like,
You heard
it's
correctly.
really interesting. Yeah.
But it teaches you stuff you need to
It
know whether
does.
you
It
want to know
does.
it or
It's like,
not.
these are how the adults like
Yeah.
play.
This is
These
how
are how
adulting
like
is
the real
done.
decisions. These are how real decisions get made.
Absolutely.
Um, and and that perspective too has to be just so interesting and valuable, knowing that like, hey, there is an end date in sight. I don't have to do this for forever. And had I tried to sort of like climb the corporate ladder in a traditional sense, you probably wouldn't have access to the same rooms that you had access to post acquisition. So
It
even like that
jumps you
perspective is quite cool.
past some levels, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can tell you one really interesting thing that's occurring to me now about this is it I considered that to be a failure because again, my
Mm,
partner and I were forced to do it. And it doesn't matter how much, you make money, but it doesn't, how much money you make on it doesn't correlate to what your values are. And when you're forced to sell, especially coming from MIT, it's like that, Richard Stallman, he's like a very, very well known individual in the world of open source. He used to come over to MIT Student House where I lived like once a month and just have dinner. Like you come from that world of open source to go to be forcibly sold to the company that was at the time like considered like the proprietary Death Star, So
yeah.
so again, it was I have to give them a lot of credit. I did learn a lot while I was there, and I made some really great relationships, and I grew up a lot. But I will tell you that the most valuable thing I learned because of how I viewed that situation as a failure was to really embrace failure, which is so important in the world of AI, because
Mm,
basically you just fail continuously to smaller degrees until you hit that inflection point between success and failure in like your machine learning models where they actually work, they achieve the KPIs, the metrics you're going for. So you have to be really comfortable embracing failure. And so that did give me that comfortability, like, okay, the world doesn't collapse when you don't get what you want or things don't work out the way you
yeah.
want. It could actually lead to better things. And in my case, I unequivocally think it did because I might have stayed there or just done a corporate job for decades and then realized that that was not a life that was compatible with who I am.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a beautiful segue to my question for you, which is you were working on AI and machine learning long before the launch of ChatGPT, long
Yeah.
before before like AI went sort of quote unquote mainstream. In the last couple of years, it's been totally it seems to be the only thing that people can talk about. The adoption rate, which people have talked about ad nauseum of ChatGPT, it has just been wildly successful. I mean, my 84-year-old grandmother uses it. My
It's something to behold.
my
I've
kids
never
will
seen
use it. Yeah,
anything like it.
it's crazy, right? My young cousins who are 8, 9 years old are using it and learning things that and prompting it like I don't even know how to prompt. I mean, it's wild, right? So the adoption rate has been huge. But I'm curious, given your perspective and given the fact that you are far more educated than probably anyone that we've had on this show with respect to large language models, with respect to sort of like how we're progressing in using these agents, how they are more and more and more working their way into our daily routines, at least my daily routine. What are you like most excited about with respect to this moment, given sort of the historical context that you have, and then a close second to that is what are you most afraid of? But let's start with the positive, and and
Positive,
and then
yeah.
we'll go to the
The
the, the
positive's
potential
an
negative.
easy one, and then the potential terrible part. So I think the exciting part of this, more than anything, is at least looking at it sort of 20,000 feet, is the it's like the scale at which AI is able to sort of democratize productivity and creativity. Like
Mm,
think LLMs like GPT, they really allow individuals, even if they don't have any technical expertise, to take advantage of capabilities that previously, like you would have had to come to somebody like me to even understand what the possibilities were, let alone to leverage. Like it is shocking how you can take like individual like creators or makers or businesses and they can just do so much more without having to bring in all these consultants and technical experts, and they can get relatively biased or objective advice and insight on how to actually do things, on how to automate
Yeah.
workflows, how to innovate in a way. I can't even compare the speed of innovation. It was like, if you go back 5 years or 3 years, like before that, because the models have gotten so much better than they were before, you have to look at the world and say, well, if I had spent a decade researching online and trying to understand this and this and this about what I want to do, could I have really synthesized the information? Do I have the capability or the background or knowledge to make something usable out of all this data that, like,
Mm,
Google's organizing all this information, but I still have to, ingest it and understand it and be able to like cognitively process it in a way that will give me meaningful outcomes. Like, you can offload that thought, that work effort to ChatGPT, and in minutes you can have something that I'd argue you couldn't have had even in a lifetime. And I'm
wow.
Googling and I'm searching, because there's some people who just, probably most people, are not going to want to sit through and read like dense research reports, but there's undoubtedly going to be very useful information in there that they just need that quick piece of data, but you would have had to read through the whole thing and understand it. And that would have been inaccessible to the vast majority of folks. So that sort of elitist level between the people who understand and people who don't, I think it shatters that. And it
Yeah.
honestly makes people like me far more of a commodity, or far less relevant, which I think is a great thing, because like functioning that world, you see this segregation between people, not based upon ability, but just based upon where did they happen to land academically or whatnot. And you want everybody's creativity to be unleashed, irrespective of those details. Like, my wife is not a technologist. She's the smartest human I've ever met. Like, her ability to see a space, or to see something raw, and just to craft like a vision around it's unbelievable. And she could now use ChatGPT to understand fundamental things about, okay, like the agricultural farming, or how you have to deal with certain structural issues that would have required bringing experts in and deploying impossible amounts of capital. It's a game changer across the board. So
Yeah.
you could go on about how amazing it is, and you'd still be understating it. It's probably the most significant revolution of any time. And the only exception I would put in there might be the genomics revolution, or maybe quantum computing. But this is something
Wow.
that's tangible that everybody can grab a hold of. So it really is a game changer. So I'm definitely very excited about like the level of fairness that brings to the world.
Well, also, I mean, I think too, just the adoption rate of learning, right? And which is what you've dabbled on already here. But even just for me, right? I mean, I think probably 60% at least, maybe it's even like 70-80% of my search right now starts with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like I use it, I actually get annoyed now when I go to Google and I'm like trying to find. I'm like, why am I
Right.
doing
I'm
this? Like,
right there
no,
with
like,
you. It feels so
and
old, right?
it does, and it's like, wait, I have to go
Slow.
click on these things, or like to actually, and you realize,
You're
wow, like I wasn't actually,
sidestepping advertisements. Like,
exactly. Oh, the worst is like when you're trying to figure out what to make for dinner, and you're like, hey, here's what I've got in my fridge, and you click on a
right.
recipe website, and it takes like
They
the
tell
amount
you
of
a
ads.
story. So to
It's
justify the value of, just instead of just printing the recipe, the ingredient list,
exactly. You
100%.
have to scroll it's like 17
Yeah.
scrolls and 15 videos and like
I just did this
10,000
last night
pop-ups.
just to
Yeah.
compare it. I took a picture of what was in my cabinet, what was in my fridge, and I said, "Give me a vegan curry recipe." And I went, and just to see what other options were out there. And my God, it was
Yeah.
like banners and pop-ups. And I'm like, this is
Yeah, it's like,
a
no, no
this is
way.
a dying model. They're
It's a
going to have
dying
to evolve
business.
it.
It is, it is. But, I think too about one of my favorite use cases is, we're building a startup right now and we're trying to convince these incredible independent hotels and just luxury unique stays and vacation rentals to join our platform.
Mhm.
And, you need data to convince people of things. You need good consumer data to convince folks that, hey, actually, no, consumers do want to spend on unique
Right.
stays and consumers do want differentiated experiences. They're tired of the Bonvoys and the Hilton Honors of the world, right?
Mhm.
And so one of my favorite things has been taking all these like beautiful like research papers that smart people have done on like the state of the hotel
Mhm.
industry or the state of like experiential travel or whatever it is, and basically uploading all this like very like they probably spent like loads of time and energy and,
Right.
and money
Give me the
create these
5 minute
reports.
summary. Go.
Yeah, give me the summary, and then also give me 3 stories that I
Hmm.
can tell to prospective, alliance partners that are grounded in rich story, but that leverage really compelling data. And then it like makes
It's
my job like
incredible that you
so much
can do that,
easier.
right? Yeah.
It's so incredible, and like I haven't even these reports are like 75 pages long,
Yeah.
and they're written in a way to make you the average reader. I think I am the average reader. You read these reports and you're just like you just feel stupid because you're like, well, I don't really know like what this is referring to, or like this study, or who is this researcher, right?
You'll find that
Yeah.
research is in academia and in a lot of enterprises, like they view like complexity of language as like a
Mm.
feature, not a bug. It's like they're like, oh,
Yes.
if people are having to like Google words to understand what we're
It's a good
saying,
thing.
then we are killing the game. And you're like, you dickheads. Like, oh, sorry, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Probably shouldn't be.
No, it's fine.
You
It's
can
fine. We
bleep that
swear all the time on this
actually.
podcast.
All right.
Um,
Yeah, it
no,
annoys
but
me to no end.
yeah, a wildly exciting time. I do want to talk about some of the, I want to, our listeners are probably like, wait a second. So am I tuning into sort of like some AI next gen podcast now? Or like, I thought this was about hospitality and
We
like
could leave
cool
off. We could leave
hotels, and
off the fear if you
we'll
don't
move on.
want to hear the horribleness.
No, but I was going to say, but we are not moving on without hearing the
Okay.
horribleness. Like, give us the doomsday scenario, like, and not like the one where it's like literally the whole world ends. I mean, maybe that will happen, right? But let's assume it's not like ultimate doomsday
Mhm.
where we all cease to exist. Let's take it like maybe a layer or two up. What is
One
what
step
is a
back
more
from
realistic?
Terminator. Okay.
Yeah. What is like one or two step backs from Terminator that is within the realm of true possibility? And what I guess what might keep you up at night, if anything, about the rate at which we're progressing here?
Yeah. That one's like definitely relates to my kids and future grandchildren. Like, so if you think about how do I describe this? So think about the role that AI is having on society, right? And if you're familiar with like the role that humans typically play in like the capital labor equation, the idea is economic systems traditionally or like historically, probably hundreds of years now, they're designed to balance capital, which is like tech and tools, machines, that kind of thing, and labor. And labor
Mm,
is typically like human creativity and our brilliance, our effort, our skills. Like AI, it kind of breaks that model, and it's
mm,
increasing. I say kind of right now, but if you look down the road, not too far, you're going to see that the balance there is just going to be completely shattered. And this is not like previous things where we're like, oh, let's make labor better, let's improve labor. Like AI is. I don't even want to say it has the potential. It is and will continue to completely replace humans in areas that we used to think even a few years ago, and some people like to still, unfortunately, I think mistakenly believe are like safe, like knowledge work or creativity or decision making. Like AI can do that, and that's not
yeah,
just a danger relative to like unemployment. It's like the whole question of society in terms of like meaning and purpose and like what is opportunity, what's value. If AI is taking over all of the tasks that we get value and like growth and we take pride in, right? Like what
yeah.
it is, it could be art, problem solving, contributing. Like what does that leave for my kids? I was
Mm,
telling my son, he's 16. He asked me like what should I be focusing on, and I'm like, well, politics looks good because humans are going to always want to keep power regardless of whatever other systems or automate systems could be doing more for them. I said that and hospitality. And
yeah,
there was, I said, hospitality, real estate thing. This domain, I feel like it's one of the more protected areas, which also pragmatically was a big part of the reason that I became so enamored with what my wife was doing with her vacation rentals, because I thought, this is a space that, I mean, as a society, we're going to have to redefine what work is and what's value and whatnot. But I do believe that humans will always like find enormous value in connecting with other people in very intentional ways. And that
yeah,
is something that is at the forefront of hospitality. So even if a robot could provide better hospitality services, I want to know that another human who can perceive senses and say they can walk through the farm and feel like the grass, smell the air, there's tactile and there's just sensory input that is hard to translate to the digital domain, and that we can
Yeah.
experience differently, even though language is just sort of like a watered down version of representing what we really think and feel. Hospitality is a way of expressing that in many ways that's nonverbal, but that other humans can synchronize with. So I feel like it's a very safe place to be in a world where there's not a lot of safe areas, especially with AGI, the risk of artificial general intelligence, right on our heels. So it's a big part of why, pragmatically, beyond just like the how enamored I am with what my wife and I are doing at Balance Farms, it is just pragmatically like an area that I feel very comfortable with working in, and potentially having my children work in the future.
So I was talking with some friends recently who listen to the podcast, many of whom have also been on the podcast. And we were remarking that the funny thing about the internet, right? The funny thing about hosting a podcast is you sort of are in the ears and, minds of people, lots of people every week. And yet you don't know most of those people, right? Like most of you listening to this podcast right now, like I've never met. I don't even know your names. It's crazy. And I want to change that. I want to get to know you guys. And so I want to eventually be able to throw like a behind the stage summit and do a big live event, and we'll do that one day. But that day is not today. But we do have an opportunity to meet in person because I have just been invited by the folks at IMN to their short-term rental forum that they're hosting in January 15th through 16th at the JW Marriott in Miami. This is a premier event for top operators, owners, investors, and tech providers in the hospitality space, and specifically the short-term rental space. So they've invited me to come do some live podcasting. I'm going to be speaking at the event. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And I would love for this to be the opportunity where I get to meet a lot of you in person, right? Give you a handshake, right? Give you a hug if that's who you are. And the reality is, like, I have loved hosting this podcast. It's so amazing. And I'm so thankful to be able to talk to guests every single week. But, right, my real love is people. I love networking. I love sharing ideas. I love collaborating, right? I love sharing cocktails with folks and talking about the future, right? And what better place to do that than at the short-term rental forum that IMN is hosting this January. So if I'm not reason enough to come, right? If this amazing event isn't reason enough to come, you should come because some of your favorite podcast guests who've been on this show and many others in the industry, they will also be at the event. So folks like Ben Wolf from Onera, folks like Isaac French from Live Oak Lake, folks like Mauricio Padilla and Emily Padan from Hinter, and folks like Matt Orley from Red Cottage, and so many more. As I mentioned, I'll also be podcasting live at the event. So once you register for the event, you'll get the opportunity to apply to be on the podcast. So if that's something that you'd like to do, I'd love to give BTS listeners preference to be featured at the actual event. Now, here's the kicker, right? So this event is January 15th through 16th in Miami at the JW Marriott. It's going to be absolutely amazing, right? But early bird pricing is available, but it ends this Friday, November 22nd. And because you're a listener of the show, you can use the discount code BTS, that's BTS as in behind the stays, for an extra 15% off that lowest rate. But again, that expires Friday, November 22nd. There's still plenty of time to, register for the event after. But if you want the best possible deal and you want 15% off of that best possible deal, be sure you register before Friday, November 22nd and use the discount code BTS at checkout. If you have any questions about the event, feel free to shoot me an email directly at zach@joinjourney.com, and I would love to share more details with you. But if you're ready to register, you can head on over to events.imn.org/STR25. You can lock in your spot, and then I will see you in Miami this January. Again, that's events.imn.org/STR25. If that's too long to remember, just scroll on down to the show notes and I have the link there. All right, guys, enjoy the episode. We're seeing sort of this growing need for inspirational spaces for folks to get out in nature, right? We talk about this all the time on this podcast. People are on Zoom all day. As more tasks get automated, the need for escape, right? The need to sort of like switch up as long as human beings remain physical, they're going to need physical experiences, right? And so maybe that changes at some point, but I think that's too far out for me to comprehend, at least at this point, of not needing to like actually be in a different space, right? And maybe
Well, Neuralink,
VR
maybe we'll
takes,
be
yeah,
integrating like
it takes
electromechanical
early
neural
things.
interfaces, and you don't have to go anywhere. You just plug in,
And
and
you
suddenly you're
literally
on
just sit.
Mars or whatever. But
Yeah, and maybe that will scratch all the itches that we're all looking for, but I don't know. I think we might be a ways out there. But what I was going to say too is I recently took my wife to a birthday dinner, and we went to this great restaurant in the DC area, which is called the Inn at Little Washington, and it's like the only like 3 Michelin star like restaurant in this like region in the greater like DC metro
wonderful.
area. And yeah, it was great. Like, and you're driving, like it's a far drive. You're
You
like,
are
I don't know, an hour
describing
and 15
the
minutes.
value of the struggle or the effort at which correlates to the benefit. The reason that plugging in or just having an effortless life where robots do everything for you will not actually be the society that humans want. It's something people could take
Yeah,
comfort with, is just what you're saying. It's like you want to put effort into something because that's how we derive value back from it. If everything is handed
yeah,
to us, it's hard to be happy if you every day, here's a Lamborghini, here's a helicopter, here's this, that. Like you want to work for the things so you can feel the satisfaction. There has to be a downside so you can appreciate the up. Like there has to be bad to
exactly.
appreciate the good.
Exactly. Oh, that is so well said, and worth thinking on more. So we drive to like this restaurant, right? And we get there. The valet is complimentary or whatever. They take our keys. I'm like waiting for like a ticket or something, right? Like some sort of like like how are they gonna know this is my car or whatever? No one gives me a ticket. No one offers a ticket. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So we walk into the restaurant, right? And the concierge, greets us. Our table wasn't quite ready, so they brought us into like their like living room. I mean, it's just like an absolutely stunning space, right? Like beautiful fire pit, like incredible bar. They bring us all a cocktail. They say, hey, like, and we had like, I had told them that it was my wife's birthday. And then actually we were there with her parents too. And we were celebrating my mother-in-law's like retirement. It was a big thing.
Oh,
Anyways, I
nice.
had just shared like very, very like vague things in like it wasn't a resi. It was like they had their own reservation system, but whatever their core reservation system was. And that was it, right? Never heard anything back. And I share things all the time. Anytime I book a restaurant, I'm always like, it's my like birthday or, trying to get like some free perk or whatever. No one ever remembers, right? Anyways, we have this great cocktail. We move into sort of the dining room. Before we know it, our waiter comes over and he takes another drink order or whatever, and then he starts speaking just very very like casually in Spanish to my mother-in-law, and somehow he like they're from Ecuador. Somehow he got informed that like she was retiring and she was a diplomat, and so he like says congratulations basically in Spanish to her. She was like, how does he know? Like
Mhm.
she was just totally like taken aback and just like, and then they brought several different surprise like courses, right, that were like Ecuadorian theme. I mean, it was just like
Doesn't
it
that
was
just make
so
an
over the top.
experience? Yeah.
It was so over the top, and like at every turn I was like, wait, how do they know this, or
Hmm.
how are they remembering this, right? Sure enough, we finished the meal. It's absolutely fantastic. And then like our car's just waiting for us as we pop outside. No one. Oh, and the coats too. They taken all the coats. No like ticket. Like literally nothing. I'm like,
Yeah.
how the hell do these folks like understand and
That
remember
is
whose
how
car is
you.
who?
That's how you do
Who's
hospitality.
exactly. And I was like, you know what? I don't care what this
Hmm.
experience costs. I am always like,
And
I will not
that
go out to
is,
eat for a year if that will enable me to have this experience at least once a year. Anyways, that was a
yeah.
long story, but
No,
I feel like that's the future.
100%. So you have just really cleanly described probably the driving motivation behind at least my what I think I can really bring to my wife's vision relative to balance and probably the broader hospitality space is like when you think of personalization,
Yeah.
it on one hand you think, well, okay, I'd like something that, if I say that I'm allergic to peanuts, don't include peanuts. This is like the most crude level of customizing the service of the product to a customer. But true personalization, which I think of as hyper personalization, where it's like almost like an industry 4.0 view of mass customization, where you at scale, whether it's at the scale of your restaurant or your vacation stay or your business, your city, that
Yeah.
you can hone in on the specific needs of the individual in such a way as to ensure that their experience isn't just like customized to them because you're at a Michelin star restaurant, but where you can do this as a commodity. And that
Yeah.
level of hyper personalization is what will leave people feeling exactly the way that you felt leaving that place. Like, okay, if I have to sell a kidney, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going back to this place because they just were gangster with everything start to finish. That is exactly what we want to do at Balance, and it's exactly where I think that AI and technology broadly speaking can make such a huge impact on this industry. And I can tell you that I don't think it is being done well at all right now. In fact, to provide the service that you were talking about, they have to charge a fortune because invariably they're not leveraging technologies in a way that would allow that to not only be seamless but to even be better. Where what if they,
Yeah.
before you came, they did an auto deep dive into your social media, your postings, your public profile, your persona, and that you pass that to an LLM, which, and do some sentiment analysis, like some natural language, chicanery on all of that data, and comes back and says, okay, here's like a psychographic profile, Zach. This is the way that he's going to want the waiter, the server, or the sommelier to even approach him. Like subtle
Mm,
things that go beyond what
yep.
even humans will think of, because it'll now have looked at all of these large data sets. You might have said, you know what, I don't like it when people in one post you might have written, I don't like it when people are too close to me. I have an issue with proximity or whatnot. Some type of like autistic disorder, or by the way, I'm on the spectrum, so when I say disorder, I don't actually think of it as a disorder, but differences,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or something that you're neurodivergent in some way, or you're just a person who just likes things in a certain way. There'd be no way to even infer that at the rest. So no matter how good they're doing, by mining all
Yeah.
that information, they could be doing so much more, and it could be something that builds. So each time you're interacting in one of these places, that information could kind of go into a corpus of like a knowledge base that could then potentially be mined for completely like orthogonal purposes. So you went to this
Yeah.
restaurant, but now you went to this hotel. Maybe they're part of some collective network which taps into, like, that's hyper personalization is one of the most attractive aspects to being for me to work in hospitality, is to really like weaponize AI to make sure that humans get a better experience, which is almost the opposite of what AI is generally talked about. It's like, let's replace the humans and let's get them out. Like,
Yeah.
I want to use to make everybody's experience so bespoke, so custom that they leave feeling the way you did, but without having to spend an arm and a leg.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, and I think there's so many things that I want to say because I'm just super excited right now. But one quick thing that comes to mind too, right, is that when you go and stay in like a nice hotel, right, especially if you have any sort of like status or loyalty, there's typically some sort of like welcome gift,
Mhm.
or they'll leave like a bottle of wine or something like that in your room, whatever it is. Well, I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was saying like, I every time I go and stay in this particular hotel chain, and she's got nice status. She's like, they always leave me like a bottle of like red wine, but like I'm allergic to red wine. But like I don't want to tell anyone because it's like
It's so
it's
nice,
just rude,
but
right?
right.
It's so, and like her point was like, but I would love like some champagne, or I'd love if they just
Mhm.
knew that, and like I'm sure that the hotel, especially at her status, like if somebody just knew, and if this data
Yeah.
was like integrated in any sort of meaningful way, and that's another big problem with like the big hotel chains, for example, like the data is just so unbelievably fractured. I mean, I have
Yeah.
status at a well-known big chain as well, and it's just shocking to me that like when I go and I check into this hotel's portfolio at again a nice brand level, right? Like, these aren't like the lowest on the totem pole hotels
Mhm.
as a part of their collection. There's like nobody knows me seemingly,
Yeah.
like literally no one knows me, and I've spent so much money with you, so much money, and like you really don't know anything about me, right? And so I
It's
do think like
so true, isn't it? Like,
what we
why
have to
that's
solve
even
for,
reality is nuts.
yeah,
Like, in fact, what you're doing with your the business model you were describing earlier that you're building out, like, extend that. I can tell you that I gave a lot of thought. Like, Hillary and I thought a lot about actually building a general purpose solutions for exactly this. I thought, okay, worked out the architecture, the technology, like what the stack would look like. It's just another project in the back of my head to address exactly this issue, because it vexes me so much that the people want to do well. Like, they're leaving that wine because they
exactly,
care. You just need something else to say, wait a minute, allergic, or doesn't like this, or like in our case, my wife and I are vegan, so we go to a hotel, we're at the Ritz, and they left chocolate. It was really nice. It was really expensive chocolate, but we can't eat it because it has milk in it. So it was like
Yeah.
little things make all the difference.
Well, and on that point too, right? It's like that is an expense to the hotel. Like the hotel is paying whatever, $15 for that chocolate bar or whatever it was, right? And if they could just reallocate that, either they don't give you anything, right? And they save a buck, right? Or they just reallocate that spend in a way that actually is personalized and
Yeah.
is dynamic, right? And and again, to your point, they just don't know. Like that's really what it comes down to, right? And if you know, and if you're empowered with technology to make these micro personalizations at scale, like that everybody wins. The hotel wins because they make you feel more loved. You win because you feel seen,
even
right?
when
Like
you know how it works behind, even when you like, they say, how the sausage is made, even if you knew behind the scenes, okay, it's an AI doing this, and it's still, you still feel cared for, you feel thought of, you feel seen. And that is, especially in a society where like so many people, especially younger folks, they just seem to be so lost, so disconnected. Like I think that level of connectivity, whether facilitated by AI or not, is absolutely vital. And the reality is that by leveraging AI, you can do that in a way that is so easy and leave such an impact. I know, even if I knew, like we stayed at this other place, this wonderful place, Blackberry Farms,
Wow,
and they
amazing.
actually left us vegan gifts every single day at our beds,
Wow.
and you just know, yeah, it's in their CRM, somebody recorded it, doesn't matter, you
Yeah.
experientially just like, this place is on its game, like we just like it, you start off your day feeling, or you end your day, because they usually will leave it there, you just feel better. And
Yeah.
that's what hospitality is all about. It's like, how do you make sure that when somebody leaves, they feel so much better than when they got there?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we should actually talk about balanced farms and like what
More about
we're just
AI.
yeah yeah. But seriously, I think your premise is amazing, right? You have sort of the validation, if you will. You've been working in this space for a very very long time. You've observed, right, that like hospitality is like this next frontier where actually a lot of this tooling, right, can be applied in a very very meaningful way.
Oh,
what
absolutely.
what is what is balance first? And we also should just say for the listeners that your wife is Hillary, who's incredible. She was on this podcast. She's the
Oh, yeah, I didn't
co-founder
even
of
introduce
Folly
her.
Collection.
Yeah.
No, I just realized the last time you said it, I was like, oh shoot, I don't think we've said that his wife, that Ari's married to Hillary, and Hillary was a guest on the pod. You guys love her collection, Folly Collection, absolutely stunning property. So, anyways, just for context
Yeah.
sake, that is who your awesome
For
wife is.
context, my wife is the most incredible human I've ever met. And if
There we go.
you should check out Folly Collection, because it is so unbelievable. But it was when okay, so I never honestly even thought about hospitality, honestly, throughout my career, until I met Hillary. This was like when we just started dating, and when I saw what she had like achieved with Folly, it just like, it totally blew me away. And then she talked about like what her thinking was, the vision behind it. Like she explained to me what intentional thinking actually meant, and like
Mm,
what she wanted to do in the future. It didn't just like get me excited about hospitality or inspired about it. It it like it like it ignited something in me where I was like,
mm,
okay, I want to be connected to the outdoors. The idea of like rural life sounds amazing. A hands-on approach, customizing things for guests, like being like pleasing people through the experiences you can offer them. Like I was like, I lived in high rises through in cities all over the world my entire life, and now I live with her on this farm, and I'm doing like woodworking, metalworking. I love like doing electrical engineering and things like all these things that were just theoretical or just never part of my world. Once you kind of understand, when somebody like that comes in your life and just opens your eyes, like it changes the way you see things. And having had my eyes open, it really, well, it allowed me to embrace Balance Farm as more than just like this really amazing concept or something that can make money. Like it was so much more than that. It is so much more than that. It was like, this is how I want to live my life, and how I believe that people will want to live their lives moving forward, especially with the future that's coming, that we see on the horizon with all the uncertainty, like having an environment. Well, let me just, if I could just take a moment to describe balance. I don't think I've
Please.
actually talked about just
Yeah.
we're all over the place, bro. All right.
I love it. I
So
love it. Yeah.
a little bit about balance. So Balance Farm, it was like it was originally this idea, it was my wife's inspiration. We moved here to Vermont during the pandemic, and we were really really drawn to like how beautiful the land was and how serene it was, and the possibility of really creating something just extraordinary, but something that would reflect like our values in terms of sustainability, innovation, community. And so we bought 540 acres of really untouched land up here, and we just started
Wow.
dreaming like how could we build sort of a luxury, eco-friendly, like a first-class micro community. What could that even be? And that's where balance started. Now, obviously, this, as I mentioned, this is balance really represents like the way I want to share my life with Hillary and our kids and our extended family. Like my brother lives here now, and we're just like we're seeing this idea of integrating our life and our work and our values and our future. And when you really this isn't super related to balance, but it kind of is, like when you fall impossibly like deeply in love with somebody, you just want to, like, everything about them becomes like the greatest thing in the world and it becomes
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
her work in hospitality, like I saw following, maybe I wasn't objective, but I just thought it's incredibly inspiring, and it's
Yeah.
just amazing. But what really motivated me was this like desire to just spend as much time working with her on the things that like represented our mutual dreams. And so it wasn't just a business decision to do hospitality and balance, it was like being around the person who makes me the best version of myself every single day, and do it in a way where we can meaningfully grow the the business, the idea, the community, and ourselves like together. And that's ultimately what balance was. That's where balance was sort of created as something concrete versus just the idea. Now, of course, my aspect relative to balance is much more about, okay, how do I bring AI and technology in a really invisible way? So like
Mm.
underground, I want to do all these crazy things with balance. We're going to do like we already have like prototypes of this stuff built out, and there's wiring and electronics all over the place. But like IoT, smart tech, AI integrating in a way that is totally invisible, so you get less technology is like visible, like minimal screens, you can control everything through voice, whatever, but that it is there to serve you at a moment's notice in a way that is private and hyper personalized and truly focused on making sure that your experience there, whether it's, and I learned this term only a few weeks ago, like this idea of like be leisure, whether you're there for business or to relax or
Yeah.
whatever else, that you can have the best possible experience because the place bends to your will. Like that's what we
Mm.
want. The technology and the environment can allow us to do. Is you can be in a place that's just stunning and that feels amazing, where you're healthier just through breathing and for having been there, and psychologically and spiritually and whatnot, but also where the place is actively trying to cater to you and think and proactively think, how can I make this human's experience better for what they want? That's what
Yeah.
balance is about more than anything.
And so, like practically speaking, like this is a micro resort concept. Is it sort of like are you guys building out residences that people will buy or rent, or like,
Yeah.
well, from a practicality standpoint, how is this vision actualized?
So it's sort of a hybrid model where obviously there's going to be like luxury rentals, because that's an economically effective way to provide ongoing revenue. But coupled with that, we do have this idea around it. It's at this point it is just it's an idea, but it's an idea that's backed by people who actually want to deploy capital into this. We just have to figure out the right strategy around it, where people are going to have private residences here, and those
Mm.
residences are going to be ones that we will then manage for them. So a balance is like will be a management entity that is both providing like the luxury short term rental experience, along with like the property management for those individuals who want to like be able to be a part of the balance experience on an ongoing and consistent way.
So are you guys looking at this as like I don't know, like a beta, if you will, to see like, okay, hey, how do we how do
Yeah.
we how do we create the right ecosystem that does marry everything that we love about AI with everything that we love about hospitality,
Mhm.
and then scale or license it, or like what's, I don't know,
Yeah,
what's
this is
the,
no,
I don't know, 5-year dream,
it is,
10-year dream?
that's a great question, because what I didn't say that I should have, which is this. So Hillary is, as if you listen to other podcasts, like she started with one facility, like trying to figure out, okay, how do I do a high quality Airbnb right? How do I make money with it? What experience do I have to provide? Like she learned everything with her first Airbnb, which was Folly Joshua Tree, and then
Yep.
she did Folly Mojave, which was multiple units and like on a whole order of magnitude bigger. And that was like, how do you scale it to make it a viable micro community where you've got multiple facilities where you can have, you know, TV's, shows can do photo shoots or do like you could do business interactions there. You can have like weddings, you can have like large
Yep.
events, so on and so forth. So she learned how to make these things work from the perspective of monetization, customer experience, all that kind of great stuff. With Balance, we're trying to take that and create something that is really representative of like a template. So what we're doing here,
Mm.
like I have the wackiest tech here. Like I like autonomous drones that are like using facial detection and like thermal cameras to see like, okay, is everything from moose and bears walking around to, is this human supposed to be here or not supposed to be here? Or the construction guy, should we open the gate? Like just we're throwing all this great technology to really hone in on what the right template for not just the tech, but also the way that the property should be managed and how do we make it as sustainable and self-contained as possible. That's why we have underground hydroponics. We're actually building that out now so that we want to have our own like regenerative food options here. So we want to be growing food. We want to be providing like have sustainable energy. So we've got lots of solar and we've got redundant power. We're just basically over engineering everything to see what works best. Like we've got thousands of gallons of propane and way too many generators in case the power grid goes down, which in Vermont, when it gets to minus 40 degrees, that happens. And, so
Yeah.
you want to have that. And just you're trying to figure out everything that goes beyond what she already had to deal with to figure out how do we make this a repeatable strategy so we can do this in Cabo or St. Lucia and most importantly, do it in any environment. So we're at one of the
Yeah.
coldest places. Like it really, literally got to minus 41. This was 2 years back. I was swimming through 4 feet of snow to try to reset the generator, hoping that frostbite didn't kick in in the first like 30 seconds. Like you have to deal with
Jeez.
that. And her place is in the desert where it gets like 120. So we're looking at the engineering on how do we develop a repeatable strategy, no matter the environment, no matter the need, so that we can have a self-contained community or as self-contained as possible in any location that is ultimately something that we find attractive. Like any place where we would want to be, that's what we want to be able. We want to be able to deploy like a balanced, like let's say, experience in a box.
Yeah.
And even to like
Wow.
what kind of real estate you should be buying. Like I said, it goes on deep. Like I've AI that analyzes like real estate trends, so you can find the best property, and that'll be whether you're going to see the best ROI. End to end, we want to make this brainless for people and for ourselves because we just want to repeat. Like even where we are with what we've done right now, it's like heaven to us. We have two places, a place down in Shelburne and up here because our kids go to school down in Shelburne. And so we're going back and forth all the time. It is so amazing to come up here. We jump on we have these electric snowmobile dirt bike things and we jump on our ATVs or we take we just start chopping. Like it's just a different life. We want others to be able
Wow.
to experience and we want to experience this everywhere.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That is
I know.
amazing. I mean,
I know I could go on forever,
are
but
you
I
guys
just
doing
love it
like
here.
tours? I feel like we need to start tours so people can come and just check it out and get a
Yeah.
vibe. I'm sure you want to keep a lot of people will have to sign like a bunch of NDAs or something just to come see the
Oh,
property, I'm sure. But
you know,
have you guys thought about this?
what we've done is when people have approached us to come out, we're always happy to have folks come by, and we've had like some pretty notable folks come by that just wanted to like see what we're doing and to see like understand our vision and to get a sense of what we're doing. That's mostly been through our personal network though. We
Yeah.
haven't like advertised tours because we're still building so much out. Like the construction guys are here right now skirting a new cabin that we put in place and getting the water there before the ground is too cold for them to put the conduits in. So like there's still so much happening, but we have been toying with the idea of sort of like systematizing everything we're doing, even the upfront learning, so that we can potentially save others some of the hassle. There's so much more that we know now than even 2 years ago. So I mean, every month
Yeah.
we learn things. So it's something we've thought of, but we haven't like advertised that, or it was just more like if we like somebody and somebody seems interesting, we're like, hey, cool, come on out, let's go jump on the ATVs and go on one of our trails. Let's go on a hike or something like that. than the extent of our, like, if you said, hey, Ari, me and my wife are coming out in like a week or two. You guys want to host? Like, yeah, sure, come on out. Like, it's been
Wow.
very formal, very
Wow.
formal.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I mean, what I love about several things about this, but the two things that come to mind is one, I love this idea of like actually testing everything in sort of a
Hmm.
relatively contained environment, right? And really reimagining hospitality
Hmm.
from the ground up in a way that like the larger operators, the larger brands in the space just can't do. Like, yes, it just they just can't do at the same
Hmm.
level of obsession, right? Like
Yeah,
you
this
talk
is
about the
like when we're done with our work, then we go and do more work. But it's just like
yeah,
we're
exactly.
like, oh, let's test this propane heater versus this electric in this with using this insulation to see how this feels. Like that's a test I'm running tonight. I
Yeah.
just pragmatically want to see what is like the R value, like meaning like how much insulation or how much heat will be retained by using this strategy. It's all a matter of if you're just doing the things you love, then yeah, you got to be a little insane or a lot insane to like be
Yeah.
obsessively focused on something, but it's never, the work never stops because you love everything you're doing. Hotels are not going to do that. Like they're clocking in
No.
and clocking out and calling it a day and figure, okay, how do we increase our average daily rate or whatever? And we're thinking, how do we build something that our grandkids are going to be like, yo, grandpa, this was amazing. Like we love that the
Yeah.
robot carries us over to the snowmobile or whatever the thing is, or the hoverboard or whatever is going to be down that, at that point in time.
But I mean, the other thing too, I was going to say is it's just it's really neat to be able to have the opportunity in this space, right, to test so many different things, right? Because again, like it's
Oh,
just the possibilities are endless, right? And you're
it's
learning
so
every
much.
day, you're taking notes every day, and yet like these are the very things that I believe are fundamentally essential for the future of hospitality. Like I've been thinking about
Yeah.
this whole idea of like the new luxury, right? Like,
Hmm.
and what is the new luxury? Like what are the things that travelers are seeking and consumers want? And I think it's a pretty like layered answer, but at the top of the list, I think is like true personalization. And to
Hmm.
your earlier point, Ari, like personalization is not, your first name, your last name, right? And a little bit about you. Personalization is in everything.
Hmm.
How do you want servers to approach you? Do you want turn down service or not?
Right.
Do you like this kind of snack or not? Right? Do you want to be totally left alone? Do you want text messages during your stay inviting you to do things like group activities? Like, do you want to be notified when there's cool a group gathering by the fire
Hmm.
pit so you can come out and like meet your neighbors, sort of thing? And
Just
not that you would ever be asked these questions.
that's
You will
okay.
just know.
That's okay. I was gonna say that, but you nailed it. Like that is the key. It's like you could have people fill out a 20-page questionnaire and now they're like, geez, why the fuck does this place make me write all this shit? I just wanted to have relax.
Yeah,
Like this is not what I came here for. You want to know it or infer it
intuit
so
it.
that the
Yeah,
system is
yeah,
just like the system of the space is just it's autonomously catering to your needs. In fact, when you think about like the what people will want out of luxury spaces in the future, like you said, it's not one single thing. It is a thing that is adaptable, and that kind of goes to the earlier point. Like you when you're doing something like this maniacally, just working and thinking about it all the time, and you're just enjoying it. Like the really crazy thing is that so many other things come from that. Like we realize that for operators, it it kind of sucks that you could build an incredible space, but that how do people know about it? Well, you got to pay some large fee to some group to advertise you. And I thought, well, like a business idea came about us complaining about that. And then we're
mm,
like, so now my wife created this business with this influencer, like a social media person, and this content creator, and obviously my team engineers, like this thing called No Vacancy Club, and it's a business that's designed to align brands, travel influencers, and property, so that they can literally create their own audience without like you crowdsource like customer acquisition by saying, hey, this influencer can come to my space and shoot some, and the AI will say, here's a great experience to shoot. There's a lot of cool things this is. I actually really think this is just going to be super fun business. They're going to be launching in like another month and a half. We're just wrapping up the testing of the system. But the idea that you can take a property and say, have an travel influencer stay there, create content, and then we can monetize through a brand that's going to want to be placed there. So it's like, hey, come to Balance and, drink this water. obviously influencers are
Yeah.
much more baller about how they do. So this is why I don't have any social media, because I don't know, like I'm not a social person, but like that kind of capability, like the ideas come from doing. It's like, okay, well now we know how to build it. Now we can do it repeatedly, but how do you allow people to take control of everything from the power to the customer acquisition, to their marketing, to their image? Like there's always new ideas that come, and hospitality, I don't think there's an end. In so many industries, the world is collapsing in terms of where innovation can be derived from, and in hospitality it's like inverse. It's just growing. There's so many things you can look at doing that are just truly exciting and that people haven't done before. It's like one of the few bastions of true entrepreneurial ideation that isn't swamped by, like, Google and Microsoft aren't going, they're not doing this. It's that maybe they're improving their CRM app or whatever that the hotels use, but who gives a shit? Like, we're talking about how do you impact people's lives in a meaningful way, and with all the ideas that you can just have to think, what would make people happier? What would make the owners, the operators happier? And you have infinite opportunity to have impact in that way. That's what's really exciting.
Oh my gosh, it's so infectious. I mean,
Really is.
and
I'm not a
everything
guy
that
that
you're
gets
talking
excited about much. Trust me, I am a boring fucking human. Like, I just like to like read research and do my little math and my AI. But when this stuff hit, man, I can tell you, I like look forward to like what's the next thing we get to build, and we get connected to all these amazing people who are in the space. And there's something I know you must be able to synchronize this, being somebody who's so much more deeply in the industry than I'm. Like, there is a difference in the people that are in hospitality. They are good fucking people. Like, it's hard to
Yeah,
find a person who's like, you're just like, what a dickhead. Like,
yeah,
everybody that we meet, from the people who
yeah.
build these places to maintain them, to visit them, like the guests that we've done we had some trials with guests coming here. These Hillary, knowing how to do, she's like has this notebook where they get to write in their experience, which is just so cool. You read the stuff and it's like they're part of your family. Like, they call you and we're like, oh, they brought their dogs. You're like, oh yeah, take some of the wine. It's down here. Like, that's not something that happens in my industry. No engineer is like,
Yeah.
hey, let's go hang out. You're like, get away, weirdo. The hospitality is so, it's just so, it connects people in such intimate ways that I think it's really beautiful. And that's something that
Yeah.
I haven't seen in many other communities. I have seen it in a few, but not many others.
Well, and what I think is so exciting about what you guys are doing is you're really, I think, paving a way for entrepreneurs, right, from other places to
Mhm.
come in and start innovating and realize, like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of opportunity here. You get some, great entrepreneurs like yourself, great technologists like yourself coming in and trying to actually solve some of the massive problems that I think exist in
Mhm.
the industry, right? Everyone wants to deliver these magical experiences, right? Hospitality is all baked on this idea that the impossible should be possible,
Mhm.
right? When you're staying at a hotel, right? The idea of like actually having people that are there to serve you, right,
Yeah.
and meet every need, right? That is what people are paying for,
Mhm.
and historically, maybe the top 1% of properties can do this really, really well, but the other 99% struggle. They struggle because they
And
don't have the mechanisms,
but
they don't have the vehicles.
that is the exact problem. So people like me don't typically, like, if I hadn't been for the perfection that is his Hillary, I would never, like, I wouldn't have thought about hospitality. I would have just been walking around like, yeah, okay, hotels are nice, like whatever. Like, there's not a lot of intersection with my world to this world,
Yeah,
which is why I think it's so far behind. And I can tell you that, the biggest gap that I've seen is like, you can talk to all these folks and I think, let me put it this way. I think there should only be one barrier. I think there should be one barrier to being in hospitality, and that should be desire. Like, if you are the kind of person that likes to make other people happy and you're willing to put in the work, you should be able to follow a systematic approach that like takes you from zero to hero. And there is obviously uniqueness and everything, but is what would allow people to sort of layer in their own personality. If they have like an underlying foundation that is solid, then they can layer in all of the other aspects of themselves that would make it really bespoke to who they are. And sadly, like, a lot of folks, when they talk to Hilly, they're like, can you just run this for me? Tell me, how do I manage it?
yeah,
And even me, I probably had, I don't know, this last 2 months, probably 10 requests from folks like, could you just tell me, how do I automate this? Or what's the right way to like hyper target customers? What's the right technology to use? Like, should I use Ring for the, and I'm on a, please, no disrespect, Amazon, whatever. But like, there's so many smarter ways to do things. And if you don't know who to ask, it just seems like a desert of crazy and you're like, I'm going to make the wrong move every single time because there's no like prescriptive blueprint for how you do
Yeah.
this. And that's what I think really we're trying to do with Balance. We see it ourselves. Like we could just go do consulting and help you with this. But if we systematize it, then we can bring it to a larger group of bring it to the world.
Yeah. I mean, it really is sort of like democratizing the ability to have an incredibly personalized, luxurious, unique, differentiated hospitality brand and not be forced to have to end up joining a flag if that's not what you want to do. Like maybe you
For
want to
some
stay
people that
independent, right?
might be the right move, but you just said it perfectly. Like you should democratize it. Like why should you be? If that's the way you want to go, great. But some people are going to want to do it like Hillary and I do. Like say, let's do it our own way, but use
Yeah.
something that gives us a good base to operate from. And we're fortunate that we can test things out and try things, and it's fun for us to do that. But for a lot of people, like, yo, I don't have the time to be trying out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
if that investment, if that was the wrong computer that I bought to operate my systems, or then I've just blown that money, and that was important. Like that's part of what is both frustrating and is what we think is really going to be special about a part of what we're doing. It's like there's
Yeah.
much to it, but there's a lot to it, but that's a big part of it.
Well, Ari, we could talk for hours and hours and hours, and we're just gonna have you back on, and / I'm just gonna have to fly up and go check out this. This
Yo,
incredible place.
don't
We can just
threaten
talk
us
for
with a
hours,
good
'cause this is
time, man.
amazing,
Like
dude.
we'd have this conversation out on the snowmobiles with like flamethrowers and all kinds of wacky other things that we like to do here in the winter. But we'd love to have you, man. You're a great guy, and
Well,
I appreciate what you were doing with like bringing voice to these types of issues, the types of concerns that I think a lot of people have. I've listened to a few of your podcasts after Hillary put me onto it, and yeah, you're doing some important work, and I think it's something that people will increasingly take notice of. So well done on you.
Well, thank you, man. It's a true pleasure. I just get to talk to incredible folks like you. So, I mean, I have the best life ever. But dude, I really appreciate you and your time and all the great work that you do. If folks who are listening to this want to just stay connected to you and or Balance Farms, like what's the best way for them to kind of like follow this journey as it continues to unfold?
Oh, I mean, I know this is ridiculous. I know we have like an Instagram page, but probably the easiest way is either to go to our website at balance.farm, which that's just HTTPS, balance.farm, or you could just email Hillary or I, at like Ari at balance.farm or Hillary at balance.farm.
Perfect. And I will make it really easy for folks tuning in. I'll have links to the Instagram, links to the website,
Which I
links
should
to their
know,
emails
but that's
in the show notes below.
I have nothing. But thanks, Zach. I
No worries.
appreciate it, man.
No worries. Man, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, Rob. Take care.
Hey friends, thanks for joining us for this episode of Behind the Stays. I'd love to know what you thought of the episode. Feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram at Behind the Stays or send me an email at zach@joinjourney.com. If this is your first time tuning in, it's a pleasure to have you and we hope to have you back again soon. But if you've been a listener for a while, I'd greatly appreciate if you'd subscribe to the show if you aren't already, and then leave us a rating and review of the show wherever you're streaming this podcast. Oh, and if you know a hotelier or a hospitality entrepreneur that's building something new and novel, I invite you to introduce them to me so that my team and I can discuss bringing them on the show. Again, you can just shoot me an email at zach@joinjourney.com or a DM on Instagram. Behind the Scenes is brought to you by Journey, a next-generation loyalty program built for the modern traveler. We're looking to onboard new boutique hotels, unique stays, and the top vacation rental management companies onto our platform every day. If you're a hospitality entrepreneur who has a stay or a collection of stays with soul, we'd love for you to apply to join our alliance at joinjourney.com/alliance. Again, that's joinjourney.com/alliance. Thanks for being here, y'all. We will see you next time.